Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Better Than Food Book Reviews. I'm your host, Cliff Sargent. Hope you're doing well. Great to see you as always. Let's talk about a book. Today we're going to discuss White, the new nonfiction by Bret Easton Ellis. Bret Easton Ellis is a Los Angeles author. He's also a screenwriter and podcast producer, also on Patreon. And I just listened to his talk with the author of Fight Club, Chuck Palahniuk, which I really enjoyed. His first novel, Less Than Zero, was published when he was 21, made him a success, but he's most well known for his notorious novel, American Psycho. I reviewed both on this channel, and it's no secret that I'm a fan. And I do think he's one of the most interesting living authors and public figures. I really appreciate Ellis's film criticism, and I'm envious of his wit and clarity of ideas. He's often refreshingly defiant, doesn't hold any punches, is not afraid to be contrarian, and has the sharp intellect coupled with the occasionally impudent humor to back it up. There's really nobody else out there doing that kind of thing right now that I know of, or as well. Anyways, with White, Ellis has decided to collect his thoughts and anecdotes about freedom of expression in the post-Trump era, along with film criticism and a little bit of autobiography mixed in. Basically, it's like an extension of the podcast, so if you enjoyed that, you're probably going to enjoy this. This is his first nonfiction book. It's basically one long essay. Easy read. Originally, the book was going to be titled White Privileged Male, and wow, can't imagine that not going over well today. According to Ellis, along with that, the original title, White, came from, or was inspired by Joan Didion's essay collection, The White Album, which I think he mentioned was his favorite or something like that. Joan Didion, for those of you who haven't read her, is a fantastic essayist. She did Slouching Towards Bethlehem, which I reviewed. I haven't read The White Album, but I want to read that and play it as it lays. Yeah, Didion's phenomenal. This is nonfiction filtered through the same lens Ellis uses for his fiction. In many ways, it feels like an extension of his podcast or his novels. Though what's interesting about this one, and what I think we should be paying attention to, is rather than a detached, icy, dark nonchalance that you can usually find in his other fiction, there are moments of real fear is kind of a strong word. It's more of like a quiet, exhausted disappointment. But it differs significantly from his novels. Because, you know, they're often, the tone is very, very cold. And in this one, it's almost, I don't want to say hopeful, but there's this kind of wanting to be more human or something, or more balanced maybe. It's warmer, you know, to some degree. It has a sort of like, yeah, it's critical, you know, it's still Bret Easton Ellis, but it has this, it's a little more humorous. It doesn't take itself so seriously. And I think that's his big thing with this. He's like everybody is taking themselves so seriously. And so he's like, the message of the whole book is basically like, chill out, according to him. That's what he said. But then again, it's also, you know, it's not fiction. So it goes in many different directions, discussing Twitter and social media, the time of the election, what was going on during the election, and Generation Wuss, as he's dubbed I and my peers. But mainly it's a book about freedom of speech and the unbelievable consequences suffered by those who dare to speak their minds in the post-Trump era. Personally, I'm trying to stay politically neutral. The book contains several humorous anecdotes about him having dinner with these people who basically flipped shit because of the election of Trump. And Ellis's thoughts are essentially, yeah, you may not agree with it politically, but it happened. Half the country voted him in, let's move on and deal with it. Ellis is examining why so many people destroy themselves and others over the newly elected president. His argument is that, yes, you can be very upset by something, but in order to deal with it, you have to behave like an adult. You can't fall to pieces in the face of conflict, right? Though, I mean, it's not like he's giving any answers to anything, you know, that's sort of the thing. He's shying away from any kind of like strong conviction, right? Which I think is healthy, really, these days. Everybody wants to sell you their answers, but Ellis doesn't have any answers, and that's kind of, and you know, neither do I. So that's sort of that's refreshing. Be like, I don't fucking know. This shit's all weird. Yeah, I get it. I don't know. I don't know how to fix it. But you don't have to like collapse in a heap of anxiety and fear, which he seems to say is what a lot of my generation tends to do. Hence Generation Wuss. It's refreshing after the mass hysteria that followed post-Trump, which I did my best to ignore. It was like the Red Scare. Where do you stand? Comrade, right? I mean, that's what Ellis is employing in the book. He's using these terms. Comrade and Snowflake. When he goes out to Calabasas to meet Kanye West post-Trump and slavery tweets, it felt as if he was going out to meet Charles Foster Kane at his Xanadu estate. right? It's just that is such an interesting image, you know, those two guys hanging out. Anyways, Trump was mentioned in American Psycho something like 40 times. He's Patrick Bateman's hero. Watching this whole thing play out has had to have been incredibly strange. For those of you who didn't know, Patrick Bateman from American Psycho is a maniacal serial killer who works on Wall Street in late 80s Manhattan. Fun fact, Trump was actually at the American Psycho film premiere. There's a moment in the book where Ellis is describing a series of events leading up to 9/11, and that was a very, very powerful moment in the book, just sort of seeing, you know, the perspective of somebody who was there that day, what they were doing, the days afterward, immediately afterward, the stories he heard. It's just really disturbing. And of course, you know, that kind of like marked a whole, you know, it's just sort of like the end of an era. What Ellis is trying to communicate to anxiety-ridden millennials, and everyone else really, is that fundamental wisdom, maybe especially portrayed, he'd say, by Gen Xers. The bitter pill we all have to swallow. I liked this. People might not like you. This person will not love you back. Kids are really cruel. Work sucks. It's hard to be good at something. Your days will be made up of failure and disappointment. You're not talented. People suffer. People grow old. People die. And the response from Generation Wuss was to collapse into sentimentality and create victim narratives instead of grappling with the cold realities by struggling and processing them and then moving on, better prepared to navigate an often hostile or indifferent world that doesn't care if you exist. Yeah, these are hard truths that we all have to deal with at one point or another. When I read that, it feels like this meditation on growing up and shedding some forms of youthful idealism. I think about this a lot lately. It seems like it can be very difficult to grow up and stay interested or interesting. Keeping a pragmatic modus operandi that allows you to maintain a decent quality of life often seems directly at odds with living an interesting and unique kind of life, exploding with vitality or whatever, right? The kind of, maybe that's just like the problem, right? And then we all die. In other words, how do you pay the rent and keep your dreams? Fight Club really did get it right. It's exhausting just to think about all the shit people want you to do. In this new world, and I'm not pretending to know any other, it feels as if I was just on the cusp when I was coming of age. You could just barely sense that there was another world there. One that felt oddly more adult, mature. But anyways, in this brave new world, your social status, your career, your relationships all depend on you being liked. Online, on the internet, your posts, your tweets, your friends, your subscribers, everything. It all depends on being liked. By the way, smash that like button. Why? Because I want to fit in. And heaven forbid somebody dislike you. And God help you if they have a platform and should speak about it publicly. We are all self-censoring. We're doing so because it's exhausting to deal with the repercussions of sharing your actual opinion. Which leaves us where? It's what Ellis seems to be asking in White. This is not freedom, he implies. This is some sort of Orwellian dystopia thing, right? It's like, it's so cliche to use those terms, but I mean really, it's starting to be pretty fucking weird. What does freedom even mean now? Have you ever met a free person? I haven't. I don't think he's trying to sound alarmist, but when you stop to think about it, we're all doing it if we're active on social media. We're all self-censoring, terrified of public condemnation or humiliation. We're all signed up with these corporations. They know and can recall more things about us than our most dearly loved ones. If you're a nuisance somehow, you're ostracized. And if you're a well-known personality, probably humiliated in the process. Don't behave illogically. Otherwise, you'll be machine gunned into a swimming pool and stabbed to death by synchronized swimmers like in Alphaville, right? I'm 100% guilty of this. Even right now, right? Everybody's curating, trying to look their shiniest, their best, their squeaky fucking cleanest. And it's not real. This is not real. It's not real, and more than that, it isn't even human. It's this eerie feeling which I'm sure most of you are experiencing, or would notice if you stop for a moment to think about it. The shut-off reality switch, the tune-in, the hum of the laptop and the light of the blue screen, and the entering into this land of make-believe where you try to make yourself look ideal. Yeah, it doesn't seem like a stretch to accept the idea that we might have some problems. So Generation Wuss is what Ellis has dubbed my generation, otherwise known as the infamously softened, coddled millennial snowflakes. He points out that our generation seems to have, in a strange way, a lack of empathy, a difficulty placing ourselves in others' shoes, in their experiences, having a difficult time seeing things from a different point of view. And I agree with that, actually. We've been led in so many strange damn directions, and told so many things that seem to be collapsing in broad daylight right before our very eyes. Is it any wonder we're having such anxious confusion about the way things operate? I mean, that's no excuse, but yeah, like, I get it. It's weird. Like, I don't think anybody has any fucking clue what's going on. Like, shit is really crazy. But, I mean, it always has been, though, right? That's just life. I don't know. Maybe the answer is just yes and no. I'm not going to criticize my own generation, and I'm not going to criticize the boomers or the ones who came before us. Everybody's fucked up in their own special way. It's not that you are fucked up that is interesting. Everybody is. It's how you roll with it. Do you pretend like you aren't? Or do you cultivate it and turn it into an asset? A shining, unique, personal charm. A fucked upness. Ellis is a director, a film buff, a lover of cinema, and frequently discusses it on his podcast, often talking about films from the 70s and 80s, as he does occasionally in the book. He discusses aesthetics versus ideology in cinema, and this goes back to the whole freedom of expression thing. There's also an excellent part where he discusses separating the art from the artist, and wanting to be challenged by art, exploring different worlds, perspectives, and developing empathy because of it. Even if it's transgressive, right? That's sort of the idea. Frequently, the political incorrectness, at least by today's standards, is brought up in cinema of that era. And those films, in my opinion, are vastly more interesting, more mature, more sophisticated in a way than the majority of stuff produced today. I just watched another film he mentioned in here, Saturday Night Fever, for the first time in my life. I had no idea it would be on par with the level of darkness found in Taxi Driver. But man, that is a fucking dark movie, Saturday Night Fever. Like, that is a seriously dark film. It's not just John Travolta dancing, like, though it is, and he's very good at it. But, dude, that is a fucked up film. Could it be made today? Doubt it. No way. They would burn the fucking theater down, you know? So, but coming back to this grand stifling of expression, this colossal collective castration, where do you go to express controversial ideas? I.e. any good work of art ever. Where's the good work? Where will it be produced and who will do it? It's gonna have to come from those with nothing to lose, right? But I'm very sad to say that in this era, we seem to have everything to lose online, on social media. But you can put whatever you want out there. You can put it all out there so lickety split fast, and you have access to all of these different channels and these different, media corporations that'll like blast your shit out there so everybody can see it. But is that really freedom? Is it really? What do you think? I don't know, man. He says in the book, freedom of expression had become, it seemed, an aesthetic death wish, effectively suicidal. Yeah. So, Ellis talks about some problems that we have. I do agree with him and think that a calm, reflective, well thought out strategy for dealing with this place, time, country, and world is a pretty good plan. So that's why I think the book is better than food. So who should read it? Those who are feeling anxious about, current events. Maybe you'll find yourself in good company. Maybe those who are feeling like they've had a little too much social media and feel maybe it's time to cut back. And of course, you should definitely read it if you enjoy his fiction, his style and aesthetic. And if you like Joan Didion, definitely. If you like Chuck Palahniuk, if you liked what Fight Club had to say, definitely pick it up. Absolutely. Goes right in line with that. And check out his podcast. It's great. Time for the coffee lottery. Here we go. Speeding this up today. Will M. Thanks a bunch, Will M. Sincerely appreciate it. You shall be getting this copy right here of White by Bret Easton Ellis, plus a bag of coffee. Delicious coffee. Always remember, die reading, take care of yourselves, have a good night, I'll talk to you soon. Ciao.